The second thing that we want to take a look at in conjunction with what we were talking about is what we call cumulative tick. This is published by the New York Stock Exchange. Most brokers platforms have access to it. The symbol is just tick, dollar sign tick, depending on the platforms that you're on. Usually it's usually dollar sign tick. Um, and all it tells you is at the very moment, and this indicator, which is this one here at the bottom, is an extremely noisy indicator that I actually don't recommend most traders to look at the indicator itself. What we want to look at is a modification of that indicator. But what it tells you is that at that very moment, how many stocks are ticking higher and how many stocks are ticking lower. It's basically subtracting the number of stocks that are ticking higher versus the number of stocks that are ticking lower at that very moment. And it's very chaotic and it's very noisy in terms of an indicator. And many times when you're just looking at it, you might find that it's actually not very useful. So another way to read it is the cumulative total, which I find is much easier to read. That's what we have here on the bottom. What we're doing is basically after each 15-minute bar, or in this particular case, this is and this 15-minute bar, you take the closing value of that cumulative tick, and within each session, you just add it up. So if you have more stocks that are ticking higher in this 15-minute session or 15-minute candle, you kind of take the value of that and you take the next 15 minutes. If it's more stocks are ticking higher, you add to it. If now, for example, there are more stocks that are ticking lower, you can subtract from it. And what you're really looking at is how it progresses throughout the day. And usually these types of cumulative tick handles that reset every single day, what you have is basically color coding that gives you a sense for whether there's an increasing or decreasing tick that's consecutive, or it starts to break down, right? So as you can see, if you get consecutive red bars, that tells you that the tick continues to maintain negative and it's getting more negative. If it's green and you have consecutive green bars, that's increasing and consecutively continuing to increase. And then when you start to see these dark bars, that means that even though it's still positive, it's decreasing, right? So what you're really looking for are continuous bars of either increasing or continuous bars that are decreasing without a break in trend. And that's really what's showing you whether buyers or sellers have control. So when you have this kind of continuous bars of increasing, like you saw yesterday from about 2 p.m. on, basically for roughly 3 hours or so, it was very cumulative in terms of there was no let up in terms of buying. There was one 15-minute bar that had a slight decrease and it went straight back up. And that really told you. And notice how this started moving higher here well before the actual big move here yesterday. You know, we basically saw some buyers step in near the lows of yesterday, and those buyers were extremely strong and really pushed the markets higher in the last 45 minutes of trading. But that's really kind of what you're looking for. And most days you don't really get it. You know, most days, as you can see, you kind of get a little bit of buying and it kind of dies down. This was a pretty strong day that kind of tapered off a little bit at the end of the day. But as you can see from that trading session, that was a pretty strong day where buyers maintained control throughout the day. It's not perfect, right? Sometimes you get big moves here to the upside where that cumulative didn't look particularly impressive, but if you did look at the tick itself, you did see some really high ticks, meaning what we're seeing is some 15-minute periods where there was an extreme number of stocks that were ticking higher versus stocks that were ticking lower. And then you also have this day where, you know, it seems like pretty much sellers maintain control all day. And that's really kind of where you saw, if you look at the session here, clearly downtrending day on the session. So this bottom section is really just taking this cumulative tick data that's coming from the exchanges and honestly, I don't know why they call the indicator cumulative tick. It's really just tick. What this here at the bottom is what we call cumulative tick. we're basically taking the values and continuing to add them up throughout the day. So if you have a number of stocks that are ticking higher in this 15-minute period, you add to it. If let's say also in the next 15 minutes there are more stocks that are down than up, then you subtract from it, and that's how you get this cumulative tick number bar here at the bottom. And that resets every single day. You start from 0 at the beginning of every single day. So you kind of start from 0 and you kind of get a reading from the first hour or so. That's, if you're looking at 15-minute bars, that's 4 data points. And what you're seeing is over those 4 data points, is it continuously trending in one direction or another, or is it just oscillating higher or lower? When you do get those continuous bars of increasing or decreasing values, that's when you see that buyers or sellers have control. Those are your opportunities to be buying options. And then when you see them kind of oscillate around a specific value, like some of these days that I'm showing you here, those are kind of more option, days where you want to be as an option seller. And the red or green bar just gives you a sense for whether buyers or sellers have a bit more control on that given day. If that makes sense, everyone, please type 2 into the chat window if that makes sense to you. Symbol for that is typically $tick. This is an indicator published by the New York Stock Exchange. So most brokers platforms will have access to it. You can obviously look at it on TradingView as well. But this is the most chaotic of indicators, but this is also one that will turn the fastest. Meaning when you see buyers step in, you will see it show up on cumulative tick immediately. This is kind of a leading indicator. It gives you a real-time sense for whether buyers or sellers are maintaining control and whether they're maintaining that control throughout the day.